I have been working on this city for about 6 months now, and I have definitely learned quite a few things about it. And specifically today, we are going to be talking about tips on how to build a great looking skyscraper. Now, before you start, and I know that you want to start because building a city is super exciting and you just want to start building, but before you do, it's super important to first gain some inspiration for the type of skyscraper that you want to create. So typically, here's how I start. I usually look up exterior skyscraper, just on Google or whatever that you want to use. And I'll usually scroll for like 5 to 10 minutes to try and find something that really kind of like resonates with the vibe that I'm going for. And then once you find something that you kind of resonate with, this is the one that I'm going to be going for. And this is specifically based on like the color choices that are kind of going on. You want to come back into your city, and then now here is the more kind of tedious part. You got to pick your block palette, of course. And then once you have a color palette, now here comes the difficult task of kind of figuring out how you want everything to be. Now I here have a floor plan kind of laid out, and this is definitely the hardest part. So for starters, I'm just gonna say it's super helpful to make sure that your shape isn't completely square or rectangular. You gotta have different indents like this to kind of give it more of a shape than just, sharp edges that don't really go anywhere. Now, something that I highly recommend before getting further into this floor plan is use your reference. If you don't build skyscrapers that often, then there is no shame in copying a real life skyscraper to help yourself improve on the future to when you actually can be able to build these things without looking at a reference point. So now what I typically like to do is actually map out the floor plan. And I usually use a different color wool just to kind of keep it concise. Now, this stage is definitely optional, but this is typically what I tend to do. After having all these ideas in my head, it's sometimes hard to remember what's supposed to actually go in the buildings that you're making. So for these, I'll typically look at different floor plans for whatever type of building I'm using to kind of get a general idea on what it's supposed to look like. So since I know that I want this building to be an apartment building, I've kind of selected this super general floor plan just to kind of help me get a sense of the type of vibes that we want to put on the inside of this. Alright, so we're first going to start off with our lobby area. And then after we have a lobby area, we're definitely going to want to kind of have like a behind the counter kind of thing. And then of course, since you have the lobby area, it's not 100% important that you have to address the people coming in because people live here, so make sure that you can actually get through to the other side. Now, since this is an apartment building, it's of course going to be essential to have an elevator, so let's go ahead and add that in over here. So now that we have an elevator, let's go ahead and get situated on where this gym is going to go and how the layout for it is going to work. And since it's an apartment gym, it's not going to be super massive, so basically what I've done is we have the big open area where all the different weight areas are going to be, and then we have the different locker rooms, because of course you're going to want to use the bathroom and shower and all that fun stuff. And since it's the back of the building, we can assume that most of this is not going to be glass, so we don't need to worry about that at all. And it does seem like a rather open floor plan, but that's okay, especially since, it is a gym, so it does need to be quite open. So now that you have your general floor plan, now is going to come kind of the structuring at the base of the building before you get into the top. Now for starters, you're of course going to want to figure out where each block is going to be replaced. And so like I mentioned earlier, these sections are going to be kind of these wood slats going all the way up to the top, with these middle sections being windows. So just really when you're going through this, it's important to go back to your reference if you're not familiar with building skyscrapers. And like I said, that's totally okay. But for me, I'm going to just be going off of my brain. And feel free to use anything I'm using here into your own buildings. But for me, I'm going to be having these slats to kind of break up the windows. So even though it's technically a flat building, you're not going to be able to really tell that it's flat because on the facade is being broken up by these slats. And another important thing I need you to realize is that it's very important to not just use one single material for everything that you're creating, which is why I'm breaking up the deep slate with some spruce to give it an extra pop of color around the building. Another tip that I cannot stress enough when building cities is to 100% trust the process. You're probably not going to like what you make when you're first starting, but I can guarantee to you that as you continue to build it up, you're gonna like it even more and more. All these skyscrapers that you see around me, I hated when I was first building them. Like, I'm be so for real. Like, really, I didn't like any of these when I first started, but as you continue to build them up, like, you slowly start to like them. So for real, really trust the process. That's all I can say. And another tip that I have for you that's also super important is nobody's city is perfect. Like, you need to play around with different shapes, different types of blocks, and just really play around with what you think you're going to want it to look like. Like, for example, I'm trying to play around with the chiseled deep slate to break up the same texture. And I'm not 100% sure if I like it just yet, or if I even like this front facade. But like I said, trust the process and you'll eventually like how it's going to turn out. Alright, now this next part is super important. Now that you have the walls built up, which I would say definitely kind of keep it in the same range of having like 4s and 5s. You know, you don't want it to get too tall to the point where it doesn't seem like a Minecraft scale. But this next step is really important, so pay attention. First, we're going to get out these 2 different colors wool. Now this is going to make sense in just a second. We need to make sure that we have a ceiling and a floor. This is something that I cannot stress enough when building skyscrapers. You don't want the ceiling to be the same color as the floor when you're walking around, because you're going to want to change up that color so there's different contrast between each flooring level. So it's very important that you have a double spacing in between each layer. Now on this next step, it is completely optional that you do this, but I would suggest doing it personally. This is what really helps stand apart what you're doing from the base up to the top, and that is making sure that you have a separation divider between your first floor and your second floor. Now this may seem a little bit confusing, so let me go ahead and show it in my previous designs. So for example, you can see that this bottom floor is super indented compared to the rest of it, and then the rest of it is super similar. Even over here, it's also indented to the back and then starts to go up to the top, as well as even down here to some degree. And especially on this most recent skyscraper, you can see it's really indented and dramatized, that different contrast. So over here, it's not going to be super crazy because I do love these little slats and want this to be a prominent feature of the building. So for me, I'm only going to have it come to about right here because these slats are going to be really what sets apart the different contrast. But right here, you know, we are going to want to put it out just a little bit just to create that contrast. Now, like I said before, it really does come down to personal preference of what you're doing. But since I am doing an apartment building, it's important for me to remember that this is going to have balconies. So right here, for instance, is going to be where a balcony is going to start to go. So we're going to have this indent with the normal block, but we're going to come back through with a different color to make sure that there is a difference of how the balcony is going to work. So as you can see, we're starting to build it up, and all I simply did was added these 2 blocks, put them all the way around, and started building up the previous elements we already had. Because as you can see, the more that you kind of build everything up, it starts to look even better. And with the balcony, all I did was make some defining pillars for where the windows are going to be and where the door is going to be. And now we have a nice balcony, and balconies are super important to have in your cities. Even on these buildings over here, even though it's not an apartment, I still have balconies just to kind of break up the space and add some depth. So for our next step, we're going to need to figure out this front-facing facade, since it is going to be the most important part, since it is an apartment building. So just for a second, we're going to go back to our reference and kind of see how they do it. So, you know, they got some different indents, and then this main section, which I can assume is the hallway, also has the biggest indentation. So we're going to take that into consideration and start to kind of play around with that. So I am building without a plan here, so bear with me. Hopefully I don't mess this up too much, but since we have this central part, it seems only fitting that we have yet another central part, and this is going to be the hallway as well. So we're going to play off of that for this part. Okay, so I think I found something that is going to work kind of good. Obviously it's not 100% symmetrical, but that is because we have a balcony on the other side. So I'm going to offset these a little bit and kind of push it back. And that's because we're going to be working next with our trapdoors. So this offset allows us to put the window to the back and have a little bit extra space to play around with trapdoors. I am definitely biased when it comes to using trapdoors. As you can see, I've used them on every single building except for that one. but it really does just add a lot of character to your building. And there we go. As you can see, just that simple detail adds so much, and it really is just as simple as that. I know it seems like, oh, that's it? Yeah, that's it. That's all you need to do. And look how much depth that it adds. So much detail. Even the circles add detail. And you know, it's definitely personal preference. Some people like it, some people don't. But you know, if that's for you, then I definitely suggest adding it. It really does add a pop of color and also adds so much detail. Now, the next step when you get to your balconies, I definitely suggest putting a top half slab just to kind of give it an extra detail on the inside so it's not super flat on the ceiling. Now, of course, your next step is going to be to just repeat this as many times as you want. And that's obviously a lengthy process, so I'm going to go ahead and do that super quick. We're going to probably build it up to about the same height as that for this corner. And then I'm going to hopefully be able to show you what the top and the roof is going to look like. Alright, so after you have built it to the height that you want, and I think this is about the height that I want, you can see that it's already starting to look even better, and that's just because the more repeated elements you have, the cooler it's going to start to look. But now we need to figure out what to do with the top. So for starters, we're going to find a way to cap this section off right here, because every piece of glass that you have, you're always going to want to cap off the top because it's going to look super weird if you don't. I think we're just going to go with something super simple like this. But now here comes the balcony, because we are going to want to make it slightly different. So it has kind of a step up feature like this one over here. So I think I found something that we like. This is kind of relating it down to the base floor that's down there and just kind of adds some familiarity to it. All right, now that we have our slabs, and now it's kind of a cool balcony that has an outdoor indoor kind of feature thingy going on. And now I think for starters, we're just going to have kind of this central thing go up one more time. And that's just going to make it so there is that same central feeling, but right here is where it's going to cut back, so it's going to feel different in just a second. Now, after a little bit of work, I'm finally getting there. I'm getting somewhere, you know. So as you can see, we took the same elements but put it back to the same level of this, which already is kind of giving it that more finished look since we're slowly getting to the end of it. And now is the question of capping it off completely. Now here is what I'm doing, or at least what I'm thinking I'm gonna do. We're capping off these sections with, of course, the standard double block. I feel like that's just like a given for me, is always do the 2 block set-offs. And now I'm playing around with having this end top sequence be kind of like this yellow stretch that stretches for the entirety of the building. What would be up here? I have no idea, but honestly, maybe it's an elevator shaft, because I'm thinking since it's an apartment complex, it might be a cool idea to have kind of like a rooftop pool party area. So I'm thinking of having this whole section right here going to be a covered porch area. And as you can see, that's really setting it off nicely and just really adding this cool look. So after kind of finishing up all the elements, we of course have kind of like this balcony area, which I said I was going to do, and I think I am going to do it. It's really nice, and what a view from up here, let me tell you. So that honestly capped it off so nicely. Like you can, oh, I fell off of the building. Anyways, so as you can see, this is only a portion of the rest of the building. The floor plan still has a long way to go, of course, but a lot of it is going to be super similar to this side, just repeating elements over and over again. But as you can see, the different perspectives and the depth with the steps up really help sell the idea that it is a realistic skyscraper. And coming back here, the way that it's peeking over the side obviously is making it look super nice. And that's another thing you really have to pay attention to. It seems like you don't have to, but paying attention to the different heights of the buildings is super important. Because as you can see, I specifically had it come up to that height so you could see it over this building and see it through this. So that is something that you should always watch out for and pay attention to. Really paying attention to the heights, not just how many floors you feel like building, but also what is it going to look like compared to the other buildings around it. but it seriously is starting to turn out super good already. And having these cool elements that are unique is super nice as well. And another tip that I cannot stress enough is don't be afraid of color. Please don't be afraid of color. That's something I've struggled with even in the city. Like, yeah, there's some color, but a lot of it is repeating color. So I'm trying to branch out and use different colors, which is why this one has that small element of yellow cutting through it. But please, please, please do not be afraid of color. It's so nice and refreshing to see it poke through in buildings, especially in a modern city. So yeah, that's basically the main tips that I have. Let me show you one last thing that will probably help you in the future. And that element is just going to be adding your typical different AC units and HVAC looking units. I'm just going to add a couple of super quick ones. You can see them down there, but of course you seeing me build them, it's probably going to be a little bit helpful. So typically I'll just do a 2x2 square wherever I basically feel like it. And then, you know, we can have another example of these. Add your daylight sensors, make them go to the blue so it's kind of like a solar panel. These are probably not going to stay here as they are attaching quite ugly to the building, but I just wanted to show you what I do for them. And that's literally it. Super simple, but it honestly adds so much to your city and makes it look super realistic. Even just adding that, you can see, makes it look realistic. So highly suggest it. And that's really the final tip I have. Of course, add these spires as well, so you know if there's airplanes in your city, they don't smash the top of your building off. But that is basically all the tips I have for you. If I think of any more, I'll be sure to make a part 2 to this. And let me know in the comments, was this helpful? And would you like to see more city tips revolving around things that maybe are not skyscraper related? Maybe it's the roads or smaller buildings or interiors or anything like that. Please let me know in the comments what you'd want to see. And of course, thank you so much for watching. And if you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching as well. If you want to see the rest of this being built, definitely stick around. I will be live streaming the end result of this building and the different building process. But of course, as always, thank you so much for watching. I appreciate all the recent support I've been getting on all my buildings and city, and I'm trying to get back into making content again for you guys, and I really appreciate all the love and support, and it's honestly so much fun. But yeah, of course, let me know if there's any more tips, and I hope you have a great day or whatever time of day that you're having. Have a great rest of whatever time, and I'll see you guys soon. Have a good one. Bye.